Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki. Welcome to the 461st Imagine Greater Buffalo program and our 82nd virtual Imagine lecture hosted by our wonderful Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Thank you so much for joining us today. The program is created by the Center of Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Now, today's theme is Imagine Greater Buffalo as a premier cultural and nature center. We're going to start with our speaker shortly, but first, a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted during our speaker's presentation, so if you do have a question, please type it into the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can. This program is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and YouTube channels. And we hope you share the link with your friends and networks. Now, this is the second Tuesday of the month. So C-SAAHN focuses on architecture and design. The library system was created by design and has, because of its research material, a well-regarded international reputation, along with its highly regarded local reputation. Our featured speaker today is John Spears, the new director of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. He has only been here for about a month, but before moving to the area, he was the chief librarian and CEO of the Pikes Peak Library District in Colorado Springs. John earned his Master's of Science in Library and Information Services, plus a bachelor's in music history from the University of Illinois. He has worked in libraries in Missouri, Illinois, and Utah over the last 25 years. John is past president of the Library Leadership and Management Association, was the 2015 Utah Librarian of the Year, and he currently serves on the American Library Association's Allied Professional Association Certification Committee and the International Federation of Library Associations Standing Committee on Metropolitan Libraries. He has also published articles and presented at national and international library conferences. So now I'm so pleased to welcome John Spears, our new director of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. John, take it away.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for having me here today to talk about the library. Let me pull up a presentation and okay. Presentation look okay? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As Dennis said, I've only been here for 4 weeks, so I want to thank the many people that helped me put this presentation together on what's happening at the Buffalo and Erie County Public Libraries today. But before I do that, I want to actually start with a little bit about myself. Dennis actually covered some of my professional highlights, but personally, I can let you know I was born in South Carolina. I've lived in Ireland in the United States, grew up in the Chicago area. I've worked in libraries throughout the United States. I've been director of libraries in Joliet, Illinois, Naperville, Illinois, Salt Lake City, Colorado Springs, and then of course most recently here. I came to Buffalo for a lot of reasons, both personal and professional. And I can say that this city has just done nothing but impress me with everything that I've seen so far. I've had an opportunity to visit everything from Delaware Park to the Canal Side to the History Museum, the Botanical Gardens. I've tried to do as much as I can in 4 weeks to get to learn Buffalo and Erie County. I'm really looking forward to to putting down some roots here in this city. The picture you see there is when I actually came to visit in February as a part of the interview process. That's me and my partner Brian with Shark Girl. I understand that that's kind of a tradition here. So one question I'm always asked is, am I ready for the winters? Luckily, I came in February, so I got to see what they look like, and I have no doubt that I'll be able to handle them, having spent most of my life in Chicago. So, I've talked a little bit about the city, but what really attracted me here was this library. I'm very passionate about what it is that libraries do in communities. And the 37 locations of the Buffalo and Erie County Library, from everything I've seen, they just live up to what a library can be in a community. The mission of this library is to connecting our diverse communities with library resources that enrich, enlighten, and entertain. And I think that sums up so much about what it is that I want to accomplish as a library director. So like I said, I came here for this library, and it wasn't just the mission and what I saw, it's the values that it espouses and the principles that it upholds. The principles, and these are actually stated, these have been passed by the board. The principles are that they'll provide open, equal, and free access to information in accordance with the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights, deliver timely, confidential, and customer-oriented service to meet the informational, recreational, and educational needs of the community. And it just continues through some absolutely incredible principles that define this library and really do set it apart as one of the premier libraries in the United States. And in addition to the principles that this library has, it also has core values of respect, excellence, accessibility, and dependability. Now, the slide that you see in front of you right now is actually an ALA initiative called Libraries Transform. And this was started several years ago. And it discusses, it's meant to show the value that libraries have as a transformational organization, that libraries can help transform individuals, can help transform communities. The values of the Buffalo and Erie Public Library, respect, excellence, accessibility, and dependability, all of them really lead towards that, whether it's practicing inclusion and the actions and the attitudes and valuing and supporting and respect all customers and staff, or the value of excellence, which is striving for superior performance and to maximize user experience through collaboration, teamwork, training, and enthusiasm. All of those things I've seen in just the 4 weeks that I've been here, and how important they are to this organization and the difference they make in the services that this organization provides the community. So let's talk about today's libraries. Today's libraries are still so much about literacy. When you walk into any of our locations, you're going to see an array of resources that are there to help develop a literate society. But they're about so much more than that now too. While literacy is still our bread and butter and the circulation of materials is still one of the most important things we do, today's libraries have really changed, and they're now offering things that people didn't see in the past. Today's libraries are not just about literacy, they're about family, they're about neighborhoods, about community, partners, creativity, discovery, and technology. Libraries now are doing programming for all ages, everything that ranges from the story times that people grew up with to new offerings that didn't even exist a few decades ago, like computer coding, or things that people never thought that they would necessarily see in a library, like sewing or serving holiday meals to the homeless. Those are just a few of the types of things today's library offer. But we're also looking beyond just the offerings to make sure that we're being equitable in who it is that we serve. And we're constantly striving to make sure that we're serving everyone in a community. One example of that is the immigrant community. I may have only been here for 4 weeks, but I've definitely seen the importance of this community in Buffalo and in Erie County. I've seen just an incredible welcoming attitude towards immigrants and refugees from throughout the world. And the library wants to be a part of that as well. And the library has really stood up and started providing immigrants with information, opportunities to connect with the community, their new communities, but also with each other. Libraries can be gateways to the community. They can provide a place where new immigrants and their families can find resources, can learn new skills, and can meet new people. What you see here is one program that we're offering, an immigrant and refugee resource fair that's happening this Saturday here at the Central Library at 1 Lafayette Square. It's going to be outside. If you're in the area, come by. So Saturday, May 14th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So those are some of the new communities that we're serving, but we're also finding ways to offer the programs that people have become accustomed to throughout their lives in new and different ways. One example, for instance, is this. A lot of people are familiar with story times and the efforts to really instill a love of reading in children, but there's some children that are extremely nervous about reading in front of other people. But you know who they're not nervous about reading in front of? Dogs. This is something that libraries have done that has opened up literacy and story time and reading aloud to children who before this were terrified of reading in public. One example of how libraries have changed and how today's Buffalo and Erie County Library is trying to serve people even better. Now, we do things differently, like I've said them before, and we're no longer just about what is inside the library. The Buffalo and Erie County Library is going to be out and about again. We're planning to go to the Buffalo Bison's games. We're going to be visiting schools, senior living centers, and summer camps. Those are just a few of the ways that your library, the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, is going to be reaching out to meet the needs of the entire community. Now, the past 2 years have been hard. There's no question about that. And if we're going to talk about today's Buffalo and Erie County Library, we can't talk about that without talking about the pandemic and the impact that it's had here in the library and in the community. Throughout the pandemic, this library is, just as libraries around the state and around the country were doing, pivoted and developed new ways of doing things. The staff here developed new skills to serve you better, things such as offering programs virtually, asynchronous programs, developing services such as curbside. We also brought in new ways of obtaining a card, and we have over 10,000 new online card holders. Now, this wasn't done without your input. The library conducted surveys to make sure that we wanted to ensure that you felt safe and that we were meeting your needs. Now, a lot happened beyond that. We broke records for digital circulation. Our programs pivoted to reach people where they were. We expanded Wi-Fi accessibility well beyond the walls of the libraries. And I want to thank you because the donations that we received were some of the highest we ever have, higher than previous years. This program itself and the way we're doing it, Imagine Buffalo, moved to a new online format and is now being archived as a video presentation to reach greater audiences. You can see the effect that this had in our numbers, in our statistics. Here's some comparisons. The card holders from 2019 to 2021, we added 23,000 card holders during that time. And even though our number of visitors that we had declined and our circulation declined, we reached people in different ways. And we had over 1 million digital circulations during that time. We changed how we did programming, and it went from strictly in person and non-virtual to offering virtual programming. In 2020, we offered more programs to people virtually, or we had more people attending programs virtually than attended in all of 2019 in person. And we saw that trend continue into 2021. And then, of course, we provided computer sessions, something that was incredibly important to people during the pandemic. But there are other things we did too. Due dates were extended, the online library card applications became something, and then curbside offerings also became available. We manned phone lines to answer questions. But probably most importantly, we learned. We better learned what the needs of this community, and we made a promise that we're not just going to go back. We're going to take the lessons that we learned from this pandemic and carry them forward into the future. Here's one example, job fairs. Right now, employment is important. Helping people find jobs is important. And the library does host job fairs. We work with over 1,000 community partners on events such as this that are designed to connect you with what it is that you're looking for, whether it's a job or learning another language or workforce development. Now, some of the things are pretty new that we've offered. One of them, of course, is the fine-free library. And this is something that was just announced a few weeks ago that a lot of people probably know about it. Today's library is about meeting the needs of the community. And one of the ways we can do that is making sure that our services are provided in an equitable manner and that people have access to the library resources that their taxes support. Overdue fines create a barrier to library access. If people are unable to use their fines, if people have library fines, they may be unable to even use the library. So the fine-free initiative is going to allow more residents to access the materials that they need, that they want, in a way that is more equitable across the entire population. All of our 37 libraries and 2 bookmobiles are now more accessible to people than ever before because of this. Now, a lot of people are probably familiar with the bookmobile. The bookmobile and mobile library services is something that we offer throughout Erie County. But we've added something new this year, also in response to the pandemic, and that was the library by mail, where for people who are homebound and ones that might not even be able to make it onto the bookmobile, we will now mail the library materials that they want to them. Now, a new initiative that we piloted for a little while in some of our locations, but now we've expanded to all 37 of our locations, is the borrowing of Wi-Fi hotspots and Chromebooks. This is something that is going to help us bridge the digital divide and make sure that people can be connected no matter where they are and no matter who they are. So you can check these out for 1 week from any of our locations. And I'd encourage you to check them out. They are something that is here to serve you. Now, we're always looking for ways to serve you even better than what we're doing now. And one of the things that we're looking for, that we're looking at and we'll be starting soon, is a digital streaming service where you'll be able to stream movies and music and anything from a device that you have connected. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what the library is and what it isn't. We're adapting, we're changing, and we're constantly striving to meet your changing needs. In short, we're not your grandfather's library anymore. We're something new, but everything that we do is done with you in mind. So now at your local library, you can check out sporting equipment. If the library has a makerspace, you can fabricate something, you can prototype something, you can record a track at the digital studio at the Central Library downtown. I'd encourage you to visit all of our 37 locations, both in the city of Buffalo and in Erie County, to see what makes each of them unique, because there's something special about each one. Now, the libraries, like I said, have changed. We're not your grandfather's library anymore. So you can come and listen to a performance, you can attend a class, you can watch a movie. All of these things are things you can do. Now, I've talked a lot about what we do, but we do recognize that these are difficult times, and that people want to make sure that the money they're entrusting us with through their taxes, that we're spending wisely. So for every dollar of funding, and this has been studied, that we receive from the public, we return at least $4 in value to this community. Now, we do need your support though. And I'd encourage you, if you can, to become a library advocate. Use your library and library resources. Tell everyone, including your elected officials, how great your libraries are. Follow us on social media, respond to our surveys when you see them. Hopefully, bring your friends, bring your family to the library outreach events. We want to thank all of you, the supporters. I imagine most of the people watching this are supporters, and we want to thank the entire community. This picture here shows Erie County Legislature and County Executive. Oops, I'm sorry, I apologize. This shows State Senator Sean Ryan, and he's one of the many people that we want to thank. A lot of elected officials have supported this library. Erie County legislatures, the county executive, New York State lawmakers, and we're grateful for their assistance. We're also grateful for your help and the thousands of donations that you've given us. Now, if you want to stay connected with the library, there's a lot of different ways you can do that virtually. We have a website, www.buffalolib.org. But you can also connect with us on social media, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, or the All Booked Up podcast. There's so many ways to connect with your local library. So thank you for letting me talk about this library. Once again, I'm grateful to the staff here that have done an incredible job over the last 4 weeks of giving me a crash course on everything the library has to offer. And I look forward to speaking with you again. But at this point, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, John, that was perfect. A good overview, and reiterate, welcome to Buffalo.
Thank you.
This is, I'm sure some people with the fine-free idea, it's noble. It makes all the sense in the world. Probably you've spent more, paid more staff time to follow fines than you ever got in fines. But, reiterate, it was some form of revenue, and it also might have been some form of a discipline to make sure books get back. But what's the library's thinking without fines, how they keep track of that, books coming back, and is there much of a revenue loss from that?
The revenue loss is something that's actually been diminishing with time. As the more and more people are checking out digital materials, we've seen over the past several years the amount of revenue that's come in through fines shrinking. And it reaches a point, and honestly, I think that point was reached quite some time ago, where the negatives of charging fines far outweigh the benefits that the library receives through that funding. Luckily, this year, there was an extra appropriation from the state of New York that, strangely enough, almost perfectly filled the gap that we were going to see with library fines. There's been a lot of studies about whether library fines work. And to my knowledge, there's never been one that actually showed that they were effective at getting people to return materials sooner. What they actually became was a user fee for people who could afford it. For some people, having $1 in fines to keep an item out a little longer if they wanted to read it longer, that was a convenience fee. For other people, $1 was the difference on whether they had lunch that day. And it really is an issue of equity. We want to make sure that everyone has equitable access to the resources of this library. If the fines aren't working and if the revenue is declining, it's not worth the impact that it has on our users to keep punishing them for something.
Good explanation. Thank you.
Leah, I can add one other thing really quick. Sorry. Yeah, that I just realized I should say. There is still responsibility. People can't just keep out the items forever. If they keep them out past a certain day, it's 21 days past when the item was due, they will be billed for the item. So this isn't just carte blanche to keep the items as long as you want. If you keep it, you will be billed for it eventually.
I'm glad you added that little feature.
Yep.
Leah, how are we doing for questions?
We have a few. The first is, do you think fine-free will always be a library policy?
I hope so. I can say that it's something that I firmly believe in. The last library I was at, Pikes Peak Library District in Colorado, I should say they actually instituted it back in, over 4 years ago. It's something that has been a part of my career in librarianship for years, and it's something that I believe every public library should do.
That's great to hear. And do you think things like virtual programs will continue after the pandemic is over?
Yes, I think that the libraries have discovered some things that we didn't know before. And things that, I can say that I know a lot of library directors and a lot of library staff around the country that right now are kind of like smacking themselves in the forehead with some of the things that they've learned that in retrospect seem pretty obvious. And, libraries are big organizations to pivot, especially when it comes to things that we've traditionally offered the same way for many, many years. But virtual programming is something that can reach new audience. That can reach audiences that it couldn't reach before. Another advantage that it has is that it can be asynchronous. When we used to offer programs strictly in person, you had to be available at that time and at that place. Now with virtual programs, you don't have to be there and you don't even have to be at a certain time. So it's greatly expanding the offerings. There's really 3 types of programs now. There's in person, there's virtual, and now there's that, and then there's also hybrid programs that you could do for an in-person audience, but that you could also then record and make available later for people as well.
Great. And the library system has some awesome rare collections. Are there plans to make them more accessible?
It's always fun when you start a new job, and you're asked questions after 4 weeks, because I can say what I would love to do. So I think we are going to be making those more accessible. I had a tour of the rare book room and the vault last week. The collections in this library rival those of just top top tier academic institutions or some of the largest public libraries in the country. I was blown away at what this library has in its collections. And I'm a firm believer that collections that aren't used or collections that don't serve a purpose beyond their mere existence, they're useless. There is something to be said for just that retention of something for posterity and for later generations. But there's a reason the word public is in the name of public libraries, and it's to get those incredible things that this library has out in front of the public. When you're looking at things like rare books, they can illuminate the past in ways that other things can't. They can discuss things and show things that people didn't even realize. You know, history explains where we are today, and the rare books and the historical artifacts that this library contains can be incredible ways of exploring where we came from, but also why we are who we are today.
It's a great perspective. And what is the library doing to recruit more minority librarians in the system?
You know, that's something that I think all libraries are grappling with around the country. It's very important that the libraries reach and reflect the entire community. It's one thing to ensure that you're serving the entire community, especially marginalized members of that community. It's as important to make sure that the staff that is doing so is reflective of that community, because that is how we're going to truly understand the needs of the entire community, is that the people on staff are members of it. We are an organization, you know, that follows civil service, but you know, we need to make sure that we are advertising, that we're reaching, and that people know that the library is a welcome place for them. That's one of the most important things we can do, is encourage people, encourage members of marginalized communities to see a career at the library as a viable option, and to see it as something that is that's important. That's one of the most important things we can do.
This is a little bit of a longer question. So the library has a long history of carrying social issue documentaries produced at the CBS affiliate in Buffalo, WIVB-TV. What role can the work of journalists play in establishing primary library resource material? Have you been able to work with local TV stations in some of the libraries you have directed?
Okay, I'm glad they switched to libraries that I've directed, because that was going to be a really specific question for this one. We have worked with journalists at many of the libraries that I was at. One example, the Pikes Peak Library District, our special collections did an incredible job of getting original source material from not just the journalists. I'll give one example. There was a cartoonist there named Chuck Acey, who was just an incredible cartoonist, but wrote from a very specific political viewpoint. But the 20 years of cartoons that he did, and they were syndicated across the entire country, were an absolutely incredible snapshot of where people were in certain issues. And he donated that entire collection to the library. And not only that, but we brought him in to actually do metadata, to do descriptions of each of the cartoons. There's 20,000. He's going to be doing this for the rest of his life. But he actually wrote what he was thinking at the time, so that it's not just the cartoon itself, but you'll actually get a picture into his mind. And that was an incredible gift to the people of Colorado Springs. I think one of the most important things that libraries can do when it comes to journalism, if I'm kind of pivoting away from the question that was asked, let me know, is just instill in people an understanding and the ability to think critically. You know, journalism right now, unfortunately, is a profession that is somewhat under attack, and with the consolidation of media, it's something that is really suffering. I think libraries and journalists have a natural affinity for each other. We both rely on the First Amendment. We both rely on freedom of speech and freedom of expression. They are what give us the ability to do what it is that we do. So if it was a journalist that asked that question, I would encourage them to reach out to me, because I'd love to have a conversation. I think there's a lot of ways that libraries and journalists can partner with each other.
It was a journalist, actually.
Cool.
It was Rich Newberg, an award-winning journalist here in Buffalo, who's been a great partner to the library.
Cool. That I would love to have a conversation. I think, to take the question a little bit broader, it's not up necessarily to libraries to define ourselves for the community. It's up to the community to let us know what it is that they want. The community is the center of the library. They're the beating hearts that tells us what it is that gives us life, that gives us meaning and function. So please, Rich, give me a call.
And we have just 2 more questions. Is it important to get people into the physical buildings or to get people to use library resources online?
Yes. I'll just give a blanket yes to that. I think the libraries exist to serve, and however we do that is going to be important. So if your individual circumstances allow you to come into our physical buildings, that's great, because you can actually then experience things directly, and you're going to have experiences that you can't necessarily have virtually. But if virtual is your preference, or if virtual is a necessity, then please, I would encourage you to do that. Our job isn't to demand that you do one or the other. Our job is to meet you where you are.
Great. And the last question is, why did you become a librarian? And would you recommend it to a young person?
How long do we have? So why I became a librarian is a really long story. So I'll try to say it very succinctly and just say that I fell into it somewhat accidentally, but it combined a few things that I'm extremely passionate about. One is I briefly did a stint as a social work major in college. I have seen firsthand the value that libraries can have in impacting people individually and in changing and impacting positively an entire community. The opportunity to be a part of something like that, to me, just gives my life meaning. I feel like I am part of something bigger than myself. I feel like I'm part of something that is making a difference, that is just one of the most positive forces in the world today. And I know that sounds very, very high and noble. It is. It's not me. I'm a part of something that's doing that. So yes, I would encourage anyone to explore librarianship as a field, because I think they'd be surprised what contemporary librarianship looks like and what it can mean both for them and for the people they serve.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leah, thank you for monitoring those questions. John, this has been outstanding. We do have to wrap it up. I just asked, though, a question that's not easy to answer, but we're in a time of in some ways, fractured division. I've never heard the term fake news until a few years back. Are librarians in a position to be some sort of neutral court that the public can go to ask legitimate questions and not get a biased answer, but professionally trained librarians that know how to dig out information and whatnot? Do you see that as a role for a library in the 21st century?
I do. I see, there is a lot of misinformation out there, and there is a lot of confusion over what's an accurate source, what isn't. And during COVID, that became even more muddied as we saw institutions that we've trusted for years make one statement, and then when more information came out, change that statement. And for some people, that was a natural progression of life during a pandemic. For other people, it destroyed their faith in institutions. And I think libraries can be a huge part of working with people to understand how the information ecosystem works. So not just providing the information that's vetted, that is as accurate as possible, but helping people kind of escape from Google, where the responses that you get, well, here, one of my favorite sayings is that, Google can give you 100,000 answers to any question. A librarian can give you the correct one. And I think that really does sum it up. I'm going to take your question one step further, though, and actually say that, yeah, we are fractured. There is more distrust and more polarization right now than I've seen in my lifetime. And I think libraries do have a role in bridging that as well. Libraries belong to everyone. We are not left-wing, we are not right-wing. We exist to serve everyone equally. Whoever comes through our door, whether they're rich, whether they're poor, whether they're Black, whether they're white, whether they're gay or straight, it doesn't matter. When you come into library, you're just going to be respected for your innate humanity. We're one of the few places in society where that's still the case, where when you come in, it doesn't matter your life circumstances. Hopefully having that as one of our guiding principles and having people come together that wouldn't otherwise come together, we can harness that in order to build those connections that, as we become more and more balkanized, are starting to fray and starting to break. That's my hope.
That's a good hope. And that's how we'll end this program, because the library is an important piece of our Buffalo fabric here in Western New York. So, folks, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you back here again next Tuesday, May 17th on Zoom, as we're joined by Catherine Lincoln and Jim Charlier for our annual discussion of Buffalo's Garden Walk. Finally getting back to full swing. Also, you saw the image of, and we're proud to announce how the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, for the first time, is a sponsor of Buffalo Day at Chautauqua. That's July 5th, a Tuesday. All day is free for Buffalo residents throughout Erie County. Zip codes 14201 through 14280 are included in that. If you register early, before the date, you can actually have parking free as well. So we're delighted the county, Buffalo and Erie County Public Libraries will be alerting throughout its branch system that this day is for everyone, everyone here in our greater Buffalo area. I'm Dennis Galucki. Be well and good day.